What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Crossover. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was a Saiyan Who Crash Landed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Part 8. Now, let's begin. The space between universes was no longer merely a graveyard, it was a stronghold. The Panopticon was located in the Quantum Bleed, a chaotic purple nebula. It was a wonder of cross-dimensional engineering, a station the size of a small moon built by the collective brilliance of infinite Earths. The exterior shell was made of Tony 892's silver smart metal, which shifted and flowed to deflect debris from dead realities. Under the silver skin was a framework of Earth 616 Wakandan vibranium etched with huge, brilliant orange eldritch runes created by T'Challa, the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth 991. It was the ultimate watchtower, and, for the first time since the sky collapsed, the Multiversal Alliance had a home. Naruto Uzumaki stood in the primary observation deck, facing a large viewport from floor to ceiling. The turbulent brightness of the bleed splashed across his face. He donned a sleek, high-collared tactical vest made of kinetic-absorbing mesh and carried the Void Slayer's pale, heavy hilt over his right shoulder. Naruto closed his eyes and took calm, measured breaths. Breathe in the darkness. Exhale fire. Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa had taught him meditation techniques, which he was practicing. The Void Sage mode was a terrible source of power, drawing directly from the cold, radioactive disintegration of the multiverse. When left unchecked, it made Naruto feel distant, numb, and unmooringly heavy. But by filtering that cosmic radiation via his terrestrial memories, the scent of ramen in the leaf, the weight of Cap's shield, Morgan Stark's laugh, he gave the dark energy a personality. His skin had a delicate violet gold radiance. The coldness was gone. The will of fire had claimed the void. You are sparkling again, youngster. You're going to set off the radiological alarms in Sector 4. Naruto looked around. Tony Stark of Earth 892 entered the observation deck with a warm mug of coffee. His silver endo-sim armor was withdrawn, revealing a sleek, metallic collar around his neck. He appeared peaceful, but his eyes darted quickly, examining the structural soundness of the room out of habit. Naruto grinned softly as the violet gold aura faded back into his skin. How are the temporal anchors holding? The anchors are excellent. It's the neighborhood I despise, Tony muttered, sipping his coffee and gazing out at the swirling purple nothingness. I spent a decade creating a pristine, clean universe, and you pulled me into a basement that defies all known thermodynamic laws. But I must confess, the view is breathtaking. The hefty, iron blast doors hissed open. Sam Wilson walked in, brandishing a flashing tactical datapad. Behind him stepped T'Challa of Earth 991, dressed in Kamar Taj's majestic, flowing robes over a vibranium panther habit. The perimeter has been established, Sam informed, taking his station beside Naruto at the viewport. America recently returned from charting the Omega Quadrant. We have 3 new safe pathways mapped, and she did not set off any causality traps. She is becoming more precise, T'Challa observed, his voice bearing the calm, royal authority of a king and a sorcerer supreme. Her multiversal gateways are no longer bleeding extra energy. She is learning to cut the fabric instead of tearing it. Good, Tony mumbled, tapping his mug against the glass, because if the Council of Kangs realizes we parked a moon-sized listening post in their blind spot, they aren't going to send a polite eviction notice. As if the universe was listening to the billionaire's sarcasm, the Panopticon's inside lights abruptly turned from a crisp white to a loud, angry red. An automated siren sounded throughout the station. Tony yelled, "Friday!" as his silver endo-sim armor flowed up his neck and encased his torso in a flash of liquid metal. A massive casualty event had been detected, and a multiverse erasure was imminent. Put it on the main screen. The viewport's strengthened glass polarized quickly, projecting a vast 3-dimensional holographic map of the multiverse. The squad watched in terror. On the map's far left, a dense cluster of bright, branching timelines, an entire section of the multiverse containing thousands of other realities, blinked out. This wasn't a pruning. It was not an incursion. It was an instant, complete erasure. What just happened? Sam asked, his eyes widening. Did a loom explode? No, T'Challa responded, striding forward, his hands already adorned with intricate, protective orange magic mandalas. It was not an accident. That was a synchronized and localized erase. The dynasty is sweeping the grid. Another timeline cluster disappeared off the map. Millions of trillions of lives disappeared in a microsecond. They aren't just looking for us anymore, Tony 892 observed, his HUD analyzing the scary data. They're burning down the forest to eliminate the resistance. Total erasure. Suddenly, the panopticon lurched. The artificial gravity flickered, and the vast station groaned beneath the unimaginable pressure. Friday, report. Tony yelled and braced himself against the console. Boss, we have a breach in Sector 7. Friday's voice was filled with digital panic. The perimeter anchors are collapsing. Something is tearing through the celestial shielding. That is impossible, Naruto said, his eyes narrowing. The celestial marble eliminates chronal plasma. They can't blast their way in. They aren't blasting, America Chavez exclaimed, racing onto the viewing deck, her fists already glowing with blinding starlight. They're chewing. Look. She pointed to the viewport. Thousands of gigantic biomechanical parasites swarmed through the chaotic purple emptiness. They resembled menacing, metallic centipedes, bursting with raw, violent timeline energy. They had attached themselves to the panopticon's silver hull and were literally eating through the multiversal wards. Chronophage drones, Tony identified, his repulsors whining as they charged to full power. They thrive on isolated temporal abnormalities. And a space station buried outside of time serves as an all-you-can-eat buffet. If they breach the primary reactor, the station's gravity tether will snap, Sam warned, deploying his vibranium wings. The undertow will pull us apart. We need to oppose them from the inside. Then we'll hold the line, Naruto declared. He did not hesitate. He reached back to draw the Void Slayer. When his palm contacted the hilt, his freshly mastered chakra network activated. The deep, blazing violet gold glow surged around him, blowing his tactical vest backward. The air in the room became heavy with the Void Sage's raw, terrible density. T'Challa, lock down the internal bulkheads with eldritch wards, Naruto said, echoing his total authority as the cage. Tony, flood Sector 7 with endo-sim drones. Sam, America, you are with me. We are the vanguard, Sam said confidently, clutching the vibranium shield. Let's squash some bugs. America smacked her palms together, sparking multiverse fire. Naruto did not run for the elevators. He slapped his hand on the deck. Void Sage Art. Spatial displacement. Naruto used the Hiraishin's teleportation principles and his own void chakra to create a violet glow that encompassed him, Sam, and America, swiftly folding the distance between the observation deck and Sector 7. They appeared in the breached sector's dark, shimmering corridors as the hefty silver shell bowed inwards. A 30-foot chronophage ripped through the wall, its mechanical mandibles cracking and dripping with toxic temporal acid. Behind it, hundreds more were flooding through the opening. Naruto strode forward, illuminating the corridor with his violet gold aura. He raised the Void Slayer, and the celestial marble resounded with his power. The Iron Shinobi muttered, "Welcome to the Panopticon." Naruto swings the blade. The Alliance's initial attack dropped, and fighting broke out in the hallways of the Watchtower. The Void Slayer's celestial marble didn't just sever the 30-foot chronophage, it deleted its physics. Naruto's blade sank into the hulking, metallic centipede, the anti-cosmic characteristics of the sword fiercely reacting with the creature's temporal acid. The biomechanical beast screeched, a sound like grinding gears and shattered glass, then swiftly dissolved into a cloud of harmless gray chronal dust. Sam Wilson screamed over the hull's breached, deafening noise. He hurled the vibranium shield with perfect, deadly geometry. The projectile bounced off the walls of the tight hallway, knocking the heads of 3 smaller chronophages in a quick zigzag before returning smoothly to his magnetic gauntlet. Thousands more to go. America Chavez screamed. She didn't hit bugs, she hit space in front of bugs. Like guillotines, star-shaped portals opened in a barrage, bisecting the invading parasites as they attempted to crawl through. Sector 7's corridor was a horrific meat grinder of violet gold fire, red, white, and blue vibranium and broken reality. Naruto was a blur of sheer, controlled destruction. Void Sage mode didn't have the unlimited, roaring stamina he was used to with his old sun-forged chakra. It was frigid, hefty, and required deep, meditative focus to operate. But the stopping power was simply unmatched. He set his boots, sucking in the terrible vacuum of the quantum bleed streaming through the gap. Void Sage Art. Celestial Repel. Naruto thrust his left palm before him. A localized extremely dense blast of violet gold energy exploded along the passageway. It struck the oncoming wave of chronophages like a solid iron wall, shattering their metallic exoskeletons and throwing them back out into the whirling purple abyss of the bleed. Pull the center out. Tony 892's Endo-Sim drones poured into the corridor from the rear elevators, a squadron of them. The liquid silver sentinels surged into a perfect Spartan phalanx, erecting energy shields and releasing a concentrated, blinding barrage of repulsor fire into the gap. At the same time, glowing orange geometric circles started to whirl along the walls. Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa was casting from the command deck, fortifying the internal bulkheads with eldritch magic so the vacuum wouldn't rip the rest of the station apart. "The bugs are coming back," Sam shouted, wings blazing, hovering over the drone phalanx. "They aren't fleeing," Naruto warned, his sovereign senses picking up a huge, concentrated spike of aggressive timeline energy. "They were just the battering ram." Through the jagged burning hole in the silver hull, the purple vacuum of the bleed moved. A sleek, heavily armored transport skiff clamped immediately onto the breach. The bay doors hissed open as the boarding party walked through. These were not typical Centurions. They were clad in heavy, substantially modified armor painted in a dark, bruised crimson with the emblem of the Scarlet Centurion. But one man was the difference. In his sleek silver and crimson chronal suit, without the hefty helmet, was a scarred, cybernetically enhanced visage. The Huntsman. America gasped. She knew the armor from her years of running. Kang's special tracking unit. They're pros at hunting anomalies. The Huntsman went out onto the deck of the Panopticon, pulling out a pair of crackling, dual-wielded energy whips, humming with temporal stasis fields. "The Iron Ninja," said the Huntsman with a sneer. His gaze fixed on Naruto's shimmering aura. "The Council. You're a long way from the sacred timeline, boy. And you are trespassing in my village," Naruto said, his tone frigid and heavy, resonating with the ultimate authority of the void. The Huntsman struck out. The right energy whip lashed through the air, ignoring the Endo-Sim drones entirely, and wrapped securely around Sam Wilson's ankle. "Cap!" screamed America. Before Sam could sever the link, the stasis field kicked in. Sam stopped right there in the air, frozen solid in a little bubble of stopped time. The Huntsman laughed. "I'll get the bird later." He turned his second whip on Naruto. "Get the girl. Kill the drones." The Crimson Vanguard attacked. "America, cover the drones," Naruto yelled and stepped right in front of the hunter. The second lash whipped toward Naruto's neck. Naruto didn't move. He lifted his left forearm. The crackling energy whip connected with the massive vibranium bracer of the Shinobi Mark II. The stasis field tried to freeze his arm, but the Void Sage chakra blazed up furiously. It ate the rot of multiverses. It didn't just fight the time lock. It ate it. It fed on the chronal energy like dry wood fueling a fire. The Huntsman's cyborg eyes expanded in surprise. "Unbelievable. My traps can contain a Hulk." "I'm not a Hulk," Naruto murmured, his violet gold aura flaring along the whip. Naruto jerked the whip with a savage, ground-level pull. The raw Saiyan might of his muscles wrenched the weapon from the Huntsman's hands, drawing the superior model forward. Naruto twisted the Void Slayer in his right hand. He wasn't going for a kill shot, he was going for the tech. He slammed the heavy marble sword down, destroying the temporal battery on the Huntsman's chestplate. The Vanguard leader choked as his armor shorted out. The stasis field containing Sam quickly died, dropping the captain to the floor. Sam rolled to the floor, immediately throwing his shield. It banked off the wall, hit two Vanguard soldiers in their helmets and returned to his hand as America punched a vortex under the remaining warriors and dropped them out into the crushing vacuum of the bleed. Naruto seized the Huntsman by the throat, lifting the heavily armored version off the ground with one hand. The violet gold fire in Naruto's eyes flared with terrible intensity. "Tell the Scarlet Centurion his Vanguard is weak," Naruto said softly. The Huntsman coughed, blood spilling from his lip, but a sick, triumphant grin spread over his scarred face. "You suppose we come to grab this station?" The Huntsman wheezed, laughing weakly. "You stupid, pompous fools. We didn't come to break down fences. We came to gouge out the eyeballs." Naruto's frown deepened and his grip tightened. What? Friday. Tony 892's voice boomed unexpectedly over the airwaves with an uncommon urgency. External sensor array status. Boss, Friday answered, the audio very staticky. The chronophages didn't attack the reactor. They went for the external tachyon comms and multiversal scanners. The arrays are entirely exhausted. Naruto's blood ran cold. He glanced at the huntsman. You didn't break into Sector 7 to join us, Naruto realized. You broke it as a distraction. The panopticon is blind, said the huntsman with a smirk, his mechanical eye flickering and dying. The total erasure has commenced. And you have to sit in the dark while your cherished alliance burns. Naruto dropped the huntsman, moving back as Tony 892's liquid metal poured into the passageway, patching up the large gash in the hull with a temporary solid silver scab. Over it sealed orange magic from T'Challa, putting pressure on the sector. The fighting was over. The halls were quiet, but for the hum of the Wakandan life support system. But the victory was ashes in his mouth. Sam stepped up beside Naruto, grabbing his shield. We're cut off. We do not see map. We don't see the incursions. Naruto said softly, the violet gold glow dimming from his body. We've got no windows in this watchtower. The reality of their predicament started to dawn. He stared down at the pallid, ponderous marble of his sword. The Council of Kangs had not come on the field with brute force. They had struck with a perfect, terrible plan. They had blinded the multiverse's strongest defenders, exactly as the infinite conflict had begun. The Panopticon's main observation platform was illuminated by emergency red lights from backup generators. Tony Stark of Earth 892 stood at the central holodouble, anxiously waving his hands over the real keyboards. His silver endo-sim armor was retracted, his face contorted with fury and uncharacteristic powerlessness. The huge 3D map of the multiverse that had previously dominated the room was vanished, replaced by infinite lines of scrolling, corrupted code. Tony slammed his fist against the vibranium console. Nothing, gritting his teeth. The exterior tachyon arrays aren't simply down. Their molecular structure has been transformed into raw chronological sludge. The chronophages literally digested our eyes. Can we rebuild them? Sam Wilson inquired, leaning against the window and gazing out into the whirling, chaotic purple fog of the bleed. Eventually, Tony moaned and rubbed his temples. With the fabrication units down in Sector 4, allow me a week to create new tachyon receivers. But what about right now? We are a submarine at the bottom of the Mariana Trench without sonar. We are completely and entirely blind. America Chavez paced the room uneasily, chewing her lip. I cannot punch a gateway without coordinates, people. If I open a blind door in the bleed, we could walk straight into a dying star, a black hole, or, worse, a conqueror's throne room. The silence on the deck felt oppressive. The Alliance had constructed a citadel to watch over the limitless, and the dynasty had plunged them into darkness just as the killing began. Naruto Uzumaki stood calmly by the glass, holding the pale handle of the Void Slayer over his shoulder. He did not appear to be panicked. In fact, his respiration was quite steady. In my first life, when I was 12 years old, I was sent on my first C-rank mission, Naruto said calmly, breaking the tension in the room. Tony lifted his eyebrow. Not really the time for story hour, kid. We were ambushed by the demon of the hidden mist, Naruto explained, ignoring the billionaire's irritation. He was an assassin who focused in silent killing. He used a jutsu to cover the entire bridge in fog so dense you couldn't see your own hands. We were blind. We were afraid. And we were entirely at his mercy. Naruto turned to face the room. My teacher, Kakashi, told us to close our eyes, Naruto murmured quietly. When your eyes are made inoperable, you do not panic. You rely on senses that the enemy cannot blind. You focus on your breath. You can sense the movement of the air. You sense the intent. Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa took a stride forward, his vibranium panther habit clicking softly, and the orange magical runes on his bracers gleaming brightly in the dim light. You are suggesting we use mystic projection to bypass the technological blackout. I am a void sage, T'Challa, Naruto stated, tapping his chest where the violet gold chakra ember was located. I passively absorb the bleed's ambient radiation. If my body can sense the multiverse, my mind can map it. Tony grimaced as he processed the information. You want to operate as a biological tachyon scanner. The human brain isn't designed to process the geometry of endless timelines. The tremendous amount of data input would destroy your cerebral cortex in milliseconds. Not if we filter it, T'Challa responded, his eyes widening at the tactical brilliance. Tony, if you can construct an amplification chamber out of endo-sim metal and Wakandan vibranium to ground his physical body, I will cast the astral anchor runes. We can tie his mind so he doesn't go lost in eternity. A cerebro for magic, Tony whispered, the engineer in his head quickly awakening. A fierce, arrogant sneer crossed his lips. Give me 20 minutes. The homemade array was ready in the Panopticon's meditation chamber, which was tightly insulated. The circular area featured a sleek chair made of Tony's liquid silver smart metal and dark Wakandan vibranium. The glowing blue repulsor circuitry pulsed in time with the orange, floating eldritch runes that T'Challa had painted in the air surrounding it. Naruto sat in the chair without his tactical vest, wearing only a black sleeveless tunic. The Void Slayer rested on his knees to root his anti-cosmic force. The physical tether is secure, Tony stated from the control station outside the reinforced glass wall. The heart rate is constant. Brain activity is normal. But I'm telling you, Naruto, if your vitals rocket into the red, I'm severing the feed. Hold the anchor, Tony, Naruto said quietly. T'Challa stood straight in front of the chair. He pressed two fingers glowing with orange magic against Naruto's forehead. Don't look at the infinite, Naruto, the Sorcerer King softly admonished. If you look at the entire web, it will blind your mind, just as the bugs did to our sensors. Look solely for fires. Look for oddities. Look for the will. I understand. Naruto closed his eyes. He cautiously inhaled, feeling the intense pressure of the quantum bleed outside the station's hull. The Void Sage mode is enabled. His skin lit up with a dazzling, throbbing violet gold aura. The silver and vibranium chair boosted his chakra network exponentially. Engaging the array, T'Challa said, taking a step back. Introducing Void Sage Art. Sovereign Mind. During the infinite dark, Naruto's consciousness was violently released from his physical body. He bypassed the Panopticon's metallic hull. He avoided the bleed's purple and chaotic nebulae. Suddenly, he found himself in the terrible darkness of the macro multiverse. He saw it. It wasn't a map on the screen. It was a massive, unending tree of bright, vibrating threads, but it was sick. Across the trees, clusters of light were furiously flickering out. He didn't just see the erasures, he experienced them. He sensed the sudden, terrible stillness of billions of souls being extinguished by the Scarlet Vanguard's orbital bombardments. The enormity of the genocide threatened to crush his psyche. Hold the anchor, Naruto reminded himself, relying on the warmth of his memories to protect against the cold void. He overlooked the infinite. He narrowed his attention, sweeping his thoughts over the remaining branches. He was searching for a specific frequency. He wasn't looking for technology, but for a spiritual resonance. He was looking for the tenacious, unwavering defiance that marked Earth's heroes. A single world screamed in the unspooled timeline's lower frequencies. This was not a radio distress signal. It was a vast, focused burst of magical and technical energy, desperately battling a stifling purple darkness that was actively crushing it. Naruto focused his concentration on the flare. He breached the beleaguered Earth's atmosphere. The sky was flaming purple. Massive chrono cruisers clouded the horizon. In the rubble of a shattered city, a little pocket of resistance stood firm. Naruto sensed the familiar, weighty resonance of terrestrial magic, combined with the sharp, blinding pain of bioelectricity. He didn't discover a random universe, he discovered survivors. Naruto remembered the quantum frequency before being pulled into the physical realm by gravity. He grabbed the cord of T'Challa's power and violently yanked himself back. The coordinates, Naruto gasped, his eyes widening. The violet gold glow abruptly receded, returning to his actual body. The silver chair smoked, and the blue circuitry blew out due to the massive multiversal stress. Naruto leaned over, wheezing heavily and bathed in cold sweat. Sam and America hurried into the chamber, with Tony close following. Naruto. Sam grabbed his shoulder and held him upright. Are you all right? Talk to me, kid. Naruto took a deep, trembling breath, his blue gaze fixed on America Chavez. He did not appear defeated. The fire of the cage flared brighter than ever. I saw them, Naruto said, his voice harsh but laced with iron. The dynasty is burning the branches. However, they haven't completed the sweep. I discovered a timeline. They are currently under siege, but are fighting back. Have you got the coordinates? America inquired, her fists already pulsing with multiversal excitement. Naruto hesitantly nodded and pushed himself up from the destroyed chair. He seized the Void Slayer and tightly fastened it to his back. He surveyed his team. The tactical captain, the haughty yet bright Silver Stark, the royal sorcerer supreme, and the star-punching navigator. They blinded the watchtower to keep us hidden in the dark, Naruto claimed as he walked by them towards the hangar bay doors. But a shinobi does not wait for the sun to rise to strike. Naruto peered back over his shoulder. America. Fire up the Hiraishin. We're going on the offense. The Hiraishin did not soar out of the star-shaped vortex. It burst from it like a sharp, black spear piercing the fabric of existence. The sky of Earth 414 was a terrible, stifling canvas of bruised purple and sickly green. The sheer amount of chronological plasma being launched from the Vanguard dreadnoughts parked in the exosphere clearly corrupted the pressure of the atmosphere. Below, the island of Manhattan was gone, replaced by a smoldering, glassed hole. The only territory remaining was the borough of Brooklyn, encased in a vast flickering dome of golden eldritch magic. The shield is going down, Tony 892 called from the co-pilot seat, fingers dancing across the Hiraishin's tactical consoles. The mystical barrier is at 4% structural integrity. They're breaking it like an eggshell. Naruto Uzumaki looked over the beleaguered borough from behind the pilot chairs. His violet gold aura buzzed beneath his skin, humming in cadence with the wreckage below. Bring us down, America. Naruto ordered. Tony, as soon as we break the dome, give them all you've got. Sam, we secure the survivors. You got it, boss. America Chavez gritted her teeth as she pushed the thrusters to maximum. The last stand of Earth 414 inside the Gold Dome, Brooklyn's streets were a battle zone. This reality's sorcerer supreme, Wong, knelt. His robes were burnt and torn, blood flowing from a deep laceration over his eye. He lifted his shaking hands high over his head, pouring every last drop of his last life power into the vast magical shield sheltering the surviving civilians cowering in the subway tunnels below. Ahead of him, 10 feet away, alone against the oncoming wave of Scarlet Vanguard Centurions, stood a single guy in a ragged, ripped black and crimson suit. Miles Morales panted, the lenses of his mask shattered. He had no web fluid. He could not swing and his ribs felt like they were made of broken glass. But his hands snapped and popped with blazing golden yellow bioelectric energy. Stay behind me, Wong, Miles yelled, his voice cracking with fatigue. He ducked and dove forward, narrowly avoiding a swing of a chronal halberd, and rammed both hands into the chest plate of a Centurion. Venom blast. The bioelectric shock overpowered the Centurion's armor, blowing the soldier forcefully backwards. But for every one Miles dropped, 3 more stepped through the localized temporal rifts ringing the street. A gigantic Chronos behemoth stomped around the corner of a wrecked apartment building. Heavily modified with Vanguard siege plate. It lifted its huge chronal weapon, aiming straight at Wong. No, Miles shouted, running for the Sorcerer Supreme, urgently trying to place his own body between the cannon and the wizard. The behemoth fired. Miles prepared for the final end. A loud, banging clang resonated down the Brooklyn street. Miles opened his eyes. He was still alive. There, just in front of him, was a man in a red, white and blue outfit, carrying a huge, round vibranium shield. The shield smoked. The massive chronal blast flawlessly deflected into the wall of a nearby building. Captain? Miles looked at Sam Wilson, his eyes wide with surprise. His world's Captain America had died years ago. On your left, kid. Sam shot a vicious smile, reliable over his shoulder. Before the Centurions could even process the abrupt emergence of the star-spangled aberration, the sky right above the roadway ripped open. A blinding barrage of constant repulsor fire rained from the heavens. Chronos behemoth melted quickly into slag. The front line of the Vanguard was forced back by a wall of explosive fire. Tony Stark of Earth 892 flew in from the heavens. His silver endo-sim armor shined like some deity of Earth. Y'all really let the neighborhood go to hell, Tony said, huge shoulder cannons on his armor snapping onto the surviving Centurion squads. Wong dropped his hands, the golden dome over them finally shattering, yet the relief in Wong's eyes was profound. "By the Vishanti, who are you?" "We're the cavalry," America Chavez said, appearing out of a localized star portal behind Wong, observing the civilians in the subway entrance. The Vanguard commander was a fully armored one, wielding a crackling temporal scythe, and he advanced towards the newcomers, pointing his weapon at them. "Anomalies!" shouted the commander. "You can't save this timeline. It has been marked for total extermination. Kill them all." Centurions ran at him by the hundreds. "Sam, Tony," a new voice called down to them from above, with a weight and power that made the air itself seem to shudder. "Hold the perimeter." Miles looked up. Golden hair fell as an adolescent fell from the sleek, obsidian ship hovering above them. He wore a dark, tactical shinobi tunic, and a large, pale marble blade was strapped to his back. It was the energy pouring off of him that made the hair on Miles' arms rise up. It was a violet gold fire, deep, terrifyingly gorgeous. Naruto Uzumaki crashed to the ground like a meteor. He didn't bend his knees, the concrete just spider-webbed under his vibranium boots. The Vanguard charged, firing a focused salvo of time decay beams at him. Naruto didn't take the Void Slayer. He raised his naked right hand. Void Sage technique. Sphere of Event Horizon. Violet gold fire, aggressive and angry, produced a contained, hyper-dense orb of black emptiness in his palm. Naruto didn't toss it. He simply offered it. The chronal rays hit the sphere and were immediately consumed. The temporal energy nourished the Void Sage chakra, growing the isolated black hole to the size of a boulder. The enormous gravitational force of the technique tore the guns right out of the hands of the Centurions. Naruto tightened his fist. The sphere went away, but it wouldn't blow out. It went down with a great unseen shockwave of anti-cosmic force radiating out through the roadway. The shockwave swept past Sam, Tony, Miles and Wong without harming them, but when it hit the Scarlet Vanguard, their chronal armor short-circuited severely. The temporal tethers that had anchored them to Earth 414 shattered. In less than 3 seconds the whole invading troop just flashed, crumbled into gray dust and drifted away in the Brooklyn wind. The street was completely silent. The will of fire. Miles Morales looked at the adolescent with golden hair. He'd fought gods and demons, but he'd never seen someone cut down an entire army with such terrifying targeted accuracy. Naruto's violet gold aura dissolved back into his flesh, the strong multiversal radiation receding. He went up to Miles and Wong and offered his hand to the weary Spider-Man. "Are you hurt?" Naruto asked, his voice devoid of any of the chill of the void. It was warm, earthy, sympathetic to the bone. Miles accepted his hand, allowing Naruto to pull him to his feet. I've been better. Who are you lot? You're from around here. I know the Tony Stark of my universe, and he did not wear liquid silver. We're from nowhere, Naruto remarked softly, glancing at the beaten and battered defenders of Earth 414. And we're from everywhere. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Wong slumped against a smashed automobile, holding his bleeding side. The dynasty. They've been burning our reality for weeks. Our Avengers are dead. We're the only ones. Why are you here? Because we heard you fighting. Sam Wilson stepped forward, laying the vibranium shield on his arm. Kong thinks he can cut us off. He thinks he can burn the timelines one by one and nobody will see. This time we saw. Naruto stared up at the purple sky. The dreadnoughts in the exosphere were already shifting their coordinates for a subsequent orbital bombardment. This timeline is screwed, Tony said, removing his silver faceplate. The atmosphere is failing. If we stay here we're going to be fighting unending waves until the planet just gives up. Wong's eyes glowed fiercely with a protective light. We can't leave the civilians. The subway network beneath us has more than 10,000 people in it. If we run, they perish. Today no one dies, sorcerer, Naruto said. Naruto glared at America Chavez. America, Naruto commanded. Open a primary transportation gate. Not the Panopticon. Earth 892. Tony blinked, his eyes widened. Whoa, hold on a second, child. You're sending 10,000 refugees to my Earth? Naruto stared at the Silver Stark, his blue eyes hard. Tony, you erected a great shield around your universe. It's time to get people behind it. If we are an alliance, we share the load. Tony stared at the cage for a long time. He stared at the boy in the worn-out spider suit and the wizard, bleeding, who had held the line to his last breath. Tony exhaled, the arrogance melting away to reveal a modest, sincere smile. Friday, Tony said into his comms. Open planetary gates on Earth 892. Arrange the medical pavilions in Central Park. We've got company coming in. America Chavez threw her fists into the air. A building-sized star portal tore open in the middle of a Brooklyn street. On the far side, the Silver City, a pure, blue-sky utopia. Go! Sam yelled at Miles and Wong. Get the people through the gate. We'll hold the sky till the last man has gone over. Miles nodded, ripping his broken mask away. He looked at Naruto. There was a deep admiration in his young eyes. Thanks, not yet, Spider-Man, Naruto murmured, pulling the pale, hefty marble of the Void Slayer as the unmistakable hum of arriving Vanguard drop pods resonated from the purple sky above. Once your people are safe, Naruto smirked, the vicious, battle-hungry grin of the hidden leaf returning to his face. You'll have to help us fight back. The Scarlet Vanguard did not descend from the skies to conquer, they descended to exterminate. Hundreds of crimson drop pods slammed into the devastated Brooklyn asphalt, creating enormous clouds of powdered concrete. Before the doors even hissed open, temporal decay beams ripped through the dust, headed directly at the gigantic, brilliant star portal America Chavez was holding open. Shield the wall! Sam Wilson roared and dropped from the sky. Sam slammed his vibranium boots into the pavement, right in front of the fleeing citizens. He lifted his shield, and the Wakandan technology within his armor instantaneously created a large, hard light energy barrier. The chronal rays collided with the barrier, splashing harmlessly on the red, white, and blue projection. Keep moving, Miles Morales yelled, his voice shaking, as he led the scared residents of Earth 414 to the gateway. Do not look back. Just run toward the silver buildings. Above them, Tony Stark of Earth 892 was a one-man air force. His silver endo-sim armor was fluid and adaptable, changing shape as needed. When a squad of Centurions attempted to flank the portal, Tony's right arm quickly grew, transforming from a conventional gauntlet to a huge, multi-barreled plasma Gatling gun. Friday, paint the targets. Let's show them how the 892 handles pest control, Tony said, his voice cold and calculated. The flanking vanguard was shredded by a blinding storm of repulsor fire. But with every Centurion Tony and Sam killed, the giant purple dreadnoughts in the exosphere teleported another dozen onto the street. Naruto Uzumaki was at the middle of the vanguard line, dismantling the onslaught. He didn't utilize elaborate jutsu. He didn't waste a single ounce of his powerful Void Sage Mode chakra. He battled with the fearsome, unwavering efficiency of an Anbu captain. The pale celestial marble of the Void Slayer swirled in his hands. He deflected a crackling temporal scythe, moved within the vanguard soldier's guard, and plunged the sword's pommel into the Centurion's helmet. As the soldier tripped, Naruto unleashed a localized, hyper-dense kinetic kick that snapped the armor's temporal anchor, causing the version to disintegrate into gray dust. Wong exclaimed, Naruto! Among the pandemonium. The Sorcerer Supreme of Earth 414 stood near the portal's edge, his hands glowing with orange magic to help America's gateway remain stable. The last of the civilians have passed. It's only us. Naruto sliced the arm of a Centurion and kicked him back into his unit. America, get Miles and Wong through the gate. Fall back, Sam and Tony. Gladly. Tony roared and unleashed a powerful unibeam blast from his chest, clearing a 50-yard trench through the advancing vanguard. He fired his engines and flew backward through the star portal. After collapsing his hard light shield, Sam backflipped over a volley of chronal fire and dove through the rift. Miles, fatigued and bleeding, stopped at the threshold. He returned his gaze to the Iron Shinobi, who stood alone in the devastated street, surrounded by hundreds of advancing Centurions. We can't simply leave him, Miles panicked. He is the shield, Spider-Man, Wong murmured softly, resting his hand on the boy's shoulder. Trust the cage. Wong pulled Miles through the bright portal. America Chavez, standing on Earth 892, trembled from the exertion of holding open the big entrance. Naruto. I can't keep it for much longer. Naruto muttered, you don't have to. Above the roadway, The purple dreadnoughts ceased shooting drop pods. The sky began to vibrate with a thunderous, horrifying sound. The clouds split suddenly as the flagship's main weapon, a gigantic, brilliant crimson ring of concentrated temporal erasure, charged. The total erasure sequence has been initiated. The dreadnought fired. It was not a beam of energy. It was a localized wave of pure, unadulterated nothingness. As the crimson ring dropped toward Brooklyn, the tops of the destroyed skyscrapers vanished. They did not burn or shatter. The matter was removed from the timeline. The vanguard centurions on the street, considered disposable by their commanders, were caught in the radius and disappeared quickly. Naruto stared up at the descending wave of erasing. He did not run for the portal. He needed to give America the microsecond she needed to close the gate properly, or the erasure wave would flow through and infect Earth 892. Naruto slammed the Void Slayer onto the asphalt. He inhaled the intense pressure of the withering universe. The primal gold spark in his chest erupted, mixing with the multiverse radiation. The violet gold aura exploded from his body, forming a gigantic, concentrated dome of anti-cosmic fire. Void Sage Art. Celestial Aegis. A wave of total erasure struck the violet gold dome. The physical feedback was disastrous. Naruto's vibranium boots destroyed the rock beneath him. His hyper-dense Saiyan muscles shouted, his bones groaning from the weight of an entire timeline still unwritten. Blood dripped from his nose and the corners of his eyes, but his stare was fixed on the sky, unwavering. The celestial marble's anti-cosmic qualities, fueled by the Void Sage chakra, strongly opposed the erase process. Naruto stopped the world from ending for 3 tortuous seconds. America. Now, Naruto exclaimed. Naruto removed the sword off the ground, leaving the shield. The dome collapsed. A tsunami of nothingness crashed down. Naruto used his suit's maximum kinetic thrusters and propelled himself backward through the Stargate. As soon as his boots crossed the threshold, America Chavez slapped her fists together. The gigantic, building-sized doorway cracked like glass and disappeared. Earth 414 disappeared behind a closed door. In the Silver Sanctuary, Naruto crashes into Central Park on Earth 892, causing him to roll violently until coming to a halt. As he laid on his back, the violet gold fire subsided, leaving him extremely weary. He looked up at the clear, pure blue sky and the shimmering silver hexagonal planetary shield above it. "You okay, kid?" Tony Stark 892 entered Naruto's area of vision, withdrawing his silver armor. The millionaire extended a hand. Naruto accepted it, allowing Tony to help him to his feet. He wiped the blood off his lip and looked around. The great lawn of Central Park was completely covered with refugees. 10,000 shocked and fatigued civilians were crowded together on the immaculate lawn. Stark Industries medical drones were already flying through the crowd, providing water, blankets, and emergency first assistance. Miles Morales sat on a park bench, head in hands, quietly grieving for the world he had just lost. Wong sat alongside him, projecting soothing, peaceful images of golden butterflies to reassure a gathering of anxious children. Tony gazed at the audience. For 10 years, he had isolated this universe. He had created his ideal armor and sealed the doors to the rest of the multiverse, convinced that ultimate security was the only way to defend his people. Tony's arrogance was replaced with a profound insight when he saw the refugees who had survived the complete erasure of their reality. "I built a fortress," Tony said quietly, his voice strained. "But a fortress is just a tomb if you don't let anyone inside." Naruto rested the Void Slayer on his shoulder. "Your world is stunning, Tony. True strength, however, does not include maintaining a flawless mirror. It is extending your light to those who are locked in the darkness." Sam Wilson approached, his shield securely holstered to his back. He first stared at the migrants, then Naruto and Tony. "We saved them," Sam stated, his voice firm. "However, Earth 414 no longer exists, and if the dynasty discovers we're bringing individuals out just before they pull the trigger, they'll start looking for escape routes. Let them hunt," Tony told Sam and Naruto. The Silver Stark's eyes blazed with a new, frightening determination. "Friday. Activate the Genesis Protocol. I want fabrication facilities spread across the eastern seaboard. I want housing modules erected in the upstate region." Tony looked at the Golden Saint and said, "Start manufacturing endo-sim combat weaves for any refugee who can hold a rifle." You wanted to build an alliance, Uzumaki? Tony asked. Congratulations. Earth 892 is the official headquarters of the Resistance. We won't merely hide in the Panopticon anymore. We're going to develop an army. The leaders of the newly formed Multiversal Alliance convened in Stark Tower's gleaming silver war room. Naruto, Sam, Tony 892, America Chavez, and T'Challa of Earth 991 gathered around the large holotable. They were joined by the two newest recruits. Wong, who had been completely healed by Wakandan technology, and Miles Morales, who was dressed in a brand new, sleek black and red suit made of stark smart metal and Wakandan vibranium. The holotable exhibited a jumbled map of the multiverse. The Scarlet Centurion knows we're operating in lower frequencies now, T'Challa said, pointing to a cluster of crimson temporal anomalies emerging near the erased area of Earth 414. They're deploying their hunter-killer fleets. The Vanguard won't underestimate us again. Good, Miles said. His voice was no longer that of a terrified child. It had the harsh edge of a survivor with nothing to lose. Because we're not running anymore. Naruto looked around the table. He spotted the Sorcerer Supreme, the Captain, the Silver Architect, the Starwalker, the Mystical Panther, and the Spider. They were broken pieces of splintered realities held together by a single, unbreakable thread. The dynasty relies on infinite numbers to overwhelm their enemies, Naruto told the council, echoing the cage's total authority. However, infinite variants share infinite arrogance. They consider themselves gods of time. We'll remind them that they're just men. Naruto tapped the holotable, revealing 3 separate Kong citadels strewn around the bleed. We will not wait for the next incursion. We will not wait for the next erasure, Naruto said, his blue eyes hardening into iron. We're going to target their supply lines. We're going to break their temporal anchors. The Panopticon will be our eyes, and Earth 892 will protect us. Naruto gazed at his new, multiversal family. The war for the branches has officially begun, the Iron Shinobi announced. Suit up, Avengers. The chronal forge of Hephaestus Kong did not orbit a star, it ate one. The forge was an astounding achievement in multiversal engineering, suspended in the dead vacuum of a trimmed world. It was a partial Dyson sphere. A vast interlocking shell of dark purple chronal metal around a fading white dwarf star. The vast cosmic radiation of the star was being deliberately drained, filtered via giant green temporal dampeners, and utilized to mass construct the Vanguard dreadnoughts and Centurion armor of the Endless Dynasty. It was the industrial pulse of the war engine of the Conquerors, and it was going to have a heart attack. The Hiraishin floated silently through the debris field of the dead system, its Wakandan stealth systems running at full efficiency, leaving the Obsidian ship completely undetectable to the Forge's Tachyon scanners. America Chavez clutched a localized multiversal anchor within the darkened cockpit, disguising their quantum frequency, while Hope Van Dyne steered them toward the huge superstructure. We're at the insertion point, Hope said, eyes glued to the telemetry. The thermal exhaust vents open every 10 minutes for 4 seconds to vent excess stellar plasma. That's your window. The strike team was on the hangar deck. Sam Wilson tightened the straps on his vibranium shield. Beside him, Miles Morales was bouncing softly on his toes, shaking out the tense energy. Miles wore his new suit. The Arachnid Mark I Tony 892 had braided liquid smart metal into the fabric, and Shuri had added kinetic absorbent vibranium mesh. It was black and crimson and slick, with bright white lenses that at the moment presented a horrifying amount of tactical data. Your heart rate's up, kid, Sam said, smiling reassuringly. You all right? Just doing the math, Cap. Miles gulped hard. Jumping from a spaceship into the exhaust pipe of a dying star. Just another Tuesday. It's just math, Spider-Man, stated Naruto Uzumaki as he calmly walked up to the airlock door. Naruto donned his dark tactical tunic, the Void Slayer strapped to his back. He didn't glance at the terrible expanse of the forge, he looked at his crew. We're not here to fight an army, Naruto told them, his voice taking on the absolute, concentrated cadence of an Anbu captain. We're here to cut the artery. We put the PIM charges on the primary stellar dampers and we go. The star does the rest. 4 seconds. Hope said over the radios. Vent opening, immediately. The airlock hissed. So Naruto, Sam and Miles jumped into the vacuum of space. The belly of the beast. They dove down on the huge, bright green exhaust port on the surface of the Dyson sphere. The heat pouring out of the vent was apocalyptic, yet the Wakandan undersuits kept their core temperatures ideal. Naruto dipped, leaning into the descent for more speed. The moment they reached the threshold of the huge vent, the heavy iron shutters began to close behind them. They raced into the thermal shaft and beyond the crushing pressure of the plasma exhaust, and used their localized braking thrusters to land soundlessly on the metal grating of the upper maintenance catwalk. The forge interior was horrible, an industrial horror. Below them was a vast industrial floor, as large as a continent. Millions of automated, blazing purple assembly arms were violently stomping, welding, and building the sleek, heavily armored temporal drop pods and dreadnought hulls. The noise was a rhythmic clash of metal on metal so loud it deafened him. Hundreds of Scarlet Vanguard Centurions marched in immaculate, synchronized patrols down the catwalks. "Target acquired," whispered Sam, tapping his visor. He pointed to the very middle of the structure. 3 huge pillars, lighting green, hung suspended above the manufacturing floor. These were the stellar dampers, the control rods that kept the trapped white dwarf star from exploding supernova and vaporizing the forge. "We need to trigger a simultaneous charge on all 3 to get past the safety protocols." Sam laid out the idea. "I'll take the left. Miles, you take the right. Naruto, you take the center. We move in shadows." Miles tapped the spider on his chest. The smart metal moved, quickly merging his suit into the black industrial backdrop. Active camouflage. "See you at the rendezvous," Miles's bodiless voice said. The 3 adventurers separated and dropped into the enormous, mechanical maze of the forge. Naruto moved with a scary total silence. He didn't strut the runways. He rushed up the vertical walls of the vast chasm, his vibranium boots sticking to the metal with localized magnetic bursts. A Centurion patrol was just below him, none the wiser that the apex predator lurked in the shadows overhead. He got to the center dampener. It was a big green column of chronologic plasma, buzzing. Naruto pulled out a special, glowing blue PIM charge from his belt and slapped it onto the main control node. "Center charge placed," Naruto murmured over the encrypted comms. "Left charge put," Sam reported. "Right charge set," said Miles, though he sounded a little breathless. "Hey guys, something unusual is happening over here. The assembly lines in the East Quadrant aren't manufacturing ships. They're processing rocks." "Rocks," Sam said. "They look like giant pieces of amber," Miles added. "The drones are melting them down and pouring the liquid directly into the fuel cells of the dreadnought. It's burning crimson." Naruto's sovereign senses, typically firmly leashed and restrained to avoid sensory overload from the chaotic timelines, sprang out automatically toward the East Quadrant. He sensed no chronological plasma, he smelled no raw fire. He heard the screams. It was a spiritual echo of billions of souls caught in perpetual suspended horror, a painful echo. Naruto's blood chilled faster than the bleed's vacuum. "This isn't amber," Naruto realized, his voice lowering to an icy, frightened whisper. "When the Vanguard wipe a timeline, they don't simply wipe out the substance. They take the life force. They crystallize the spiritual energy of the wiped universes to power their armada." The comms went dead. The unspeakable, unimaginable wickedness of the dynasty's military machine bore down on them. They fought not simply an army of variations, but an empire founded on the distilled souls of slaughtered realities. "Set the timers." Naruto's voice was furious. A savage fury ignited deep within his chest. "We're burning this motherfucker down." Too late, oddity. The engineer, the hefty metal grating under Naruto's feet buckled violently. He sprang backwards as a giant, luminous temporal scythe sliced through the catwalk where he had stood. From the lower levels, a Kong variation unlike any they had seen rose up on a floating repulsor platform. He was a horrible mix of tissue and massive, industrial equipment. His left arm was a giant-sized hydroelectric press, and his chest plate was a clear glass dome with a little, swirling temporal reactor where his heart should have been. "I am the artificer," bellowed the cyborg Kong, his voice distorted by the harsh metallic grinding. "And you are in my forge without permission." Alarms were ringing everywhere. The assembling arms stopped their automatic motions. Hundreds of brilliant visors on Scarlet Centurions snapped skyward in an immediate unison to seek the intruders. "Charges set. 3 minutes until dampeners blow," Sam shouted over the intercom. leaping off his catwalk and throwing his shield to catch a barrage of chronal rifle fire targeted at Miles. "I'll handle the head of the house," Naruto commanded. "Sam, Miles, clear the point for pickup." The artificer leapt, a gigantic robotic arm swinging with the power of a collapsing building. Naruto ducked the strike. The hydraulic fist crashed into the center dampener column and dented the unbreakable chronal metal, rocking the whole facility. Naruto drew his Void Slayer, but he didn't activate his Void Sage mode yet. He saved his strength, relying on the perfect, inflexible discipline of the leaf. He blocked another side swipe with the flat of the celestial marble, the impact jolting up his arms. He's too well armored for regular physical attacks. Naruto ducked a sweeping chronal blast with a backflip. "You fight like a dancer," hissed the artificer as his repulsor platform boosted him forward, "but this is an industrial area." The cyborg Kong shot a shoulder cannon that cast a wide-angle localized gravity net. The net opened, capturing Naruto in midair and slamming him roughly into the enormous green dampener column. The mass of it grew exponentially, squeezing the breath from Naruto's lungs. "I'll grind your exotic biology to a pulp and use it to lubricate the gears of my dreadnoughts," the artificer yelled, raising his mighty hydraulic fist to strike a deadly crushing blow. "Hey, Tin Man!" Miles Morales tumbled from the ceiling, his active camouflage off. He didn't hit the artificer. He fired two webs right toward the tiny temporal reactor burning within the glass dome of the variant's chest. Miles poured every bit of his bioelectricity into the webbing. Mega Venom Blast. A blazing golden-yellow stream of bioelectric energy shot into the life support system of the Kong. The temporal reactor screamed in fierce protest, shorted out by the great planetary overload. The artificer spasmed, his robotic limbs locking. The gravity net restraining Naruto disappeared at once. Naruto plummeted down to the catwalk, landing in a perfect crouch. He did not think. He drank in the ambient, chaotic energy of the fading star below them. The primal gold light inside his chest flared. The violet gold aura burst around him, aggressively pushing back the terrible heat of the forge. He seized the Void Slayer in both hands and smashed straight into the guard of the shocked artificer. Void Sage Art. Horizon cutting. Naruto cut sideways with the big marble sword. The sword was wreathed in violet gold anti-cosmic fire and cut easily through the thick industrial chronal armor. He didn't kill the variation, he sliced the cybernetic torso from the repulsor platform and split the temporal reactor in half. The artificer fell in a shower of sparks and green fluid, utterly disabled, onto the grating. "Nice one, Spider-Man," Naruto complimented, his violet gold aura receded back into the sword as he sheathed it. "Thanks," Miles gasped, the electrical output causing his suit to smoke a little, "but we have plenty of company." A huge swarm of Centurions was climbing up the catwalks, approaching their position. "1 minute to detonation," Sam shouted, rushing in and snatching Miles up by the shoulders of his suit. "Naruto, hold on." Naruto jumped, catching a strap of Sam's vibranium boot. Earth 616's Captain America grunted as the shinobi full of Saiyans and Spider-Man pushed him down. His jetpack whined as they went straight up for the thermal exhaust vent. "Hope, open the door," Sam barked via the comms. High above the great metal shutters of the exhaust vent were forcibly yanked back. The Hiraishin hovered right over the shaft, the cargo bay doors already dropped. Sam sailed them straight up the tunnel, banking hard and smashing onto the deck of the obsidian ship. "Punch it," Naruto ordered, scrambling to his feet. Hope hit the thrusters. The Hiraishin tore loose from the Dyson sphere, as the timers on the PIM charges all struck zero. Inside the forge, the localized PIM particles went off on the star dampeners. The gigantic green pillars fell quickly to pencil size, totally incapable of containing the dying white dwarf star. The star violently expanded, without the dampers. Within the cockpit of the Hiraishin, the crew looked on as the great, indestructible chronal forge of Hephaestus Kong ruptured from within. A single, silent multiversal explosion, and the Dyson sphere was devoured by a dazzling, apocalyptic flash of white, star fire, vaporizing the facility, the dreadnoughts, and the harvested temporal amber. The shockwave hit the Hiraishin, but the celestial shielding held. They'd blown up the armory. Naruto gazed out the window, his blue eyes taking in the waning star. It was a big strategic win for the Alliance. But as he thought of the shrieking amber, the distilled souls of the erased, his hand clenched around the hilt of his blade. "We cut off their supply line," Sam said softly, stepping alongside him. "Yes," Naruto said, his voice becoming pure, unbreakable iron. "But this war is no longer about territory, Captain. It is about salvation. We are going to find every single forge in the multiverse. And we are going to break their chains." The Hiraishin plunged into the turbulent, whirling purple currents of the quantum bleed, a million worlds away from the destroyed ruins of the Chronal Forge. The excitement of the blow had left the cargo bay, leaving the thick, stifling calm of survival. Miles Morales sat on a supply box in the corner, mask off, staring blankly at the mechanical floor. In a few hours he had lost his parents, his friends, his whole universe. It felt like someone else's costume, the sleek black and crimson suit, stark upgraded. Naruto Uzumaki moved silently across the deck. He smiled, but he didn't pity her. He had 2 bottles of filtered Wakandan water, and he offered one to the teenager. "Drink," Naruto said quietly. "Your bioelectric production has dried your cells. You need replenishment." Miles took the bottle automatically. "Thanks." Naruto sat on the box opposite him, elbows on his knees. The frail, secret violet gold power of the Void Sage throbbed faintly in his veins, but his blue eyes were totally terrestrial, warm and very perceptive. "I know what silence sounds like, Miles," Naruto remarked, his voice a steadying anchor in the black ship. Miles looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "How could you? You guys came in like gods. You have a moon-sized space station and a billionaire behind you. My world it's just gone. Erasure. Like someone hit delete on a keyboard. There's not even a grave for me to visit. When I was 20 years old I fought an alien god who sought to suck the life energy from my world to plant a cosmic tree," Naruto said, glancing at his calloused hands. "The very fabric of our dimension was torn asunder to stop her. I was thrown into the void. When I awoke, I was in a snowbank in Siberia, in a universe where the Hidden Leaf Village was never created. I lost my home, my friends, and the family I had just begun to make." Miles drew a breath. He hadn't known the Golden Saint was also a refugee. "For years I've been looking up at the sky, wondering if they were still looking for me," said Naruto, his voice laden with ancient, processed sorrow. "And I knew that if I allowed the hopelessness triumph, then the village really died. A home is not only the earth you walk on, Spider-Man, it is the fire you carry inside you. As long as you breathe, Earth 414 is still here. You are the monument." Miles wiped his eyes and sat a little straighter. The words didn't magically repair the trauma, but they created a critical, indestructible brace around his broken heart. "We don't trade lives," Miles muttered, a mantra he'd heard the Avengers of his own realm proclaim. "We make sure it was not in vain." "Exactly," Naruto agreed, giving a furious, confident smile. Suddenly the Hiraishin lurched violently. The artificial gravity flipped for a scary microsecond, then snapped back into place. Inside, the lights shifted from steady white to blinding, flashing yellow. "Wait!" Hope Van Dyne shouted from the cockpit. "We're in a temporal riptide, pulled out of the slipstream." Directors Board Naruto and Miles ran to the bridge to join Sam and America. They were no longer amid the flowing, chaotic currents of the bleed. They saw, under the canopy of celestial forged steel. They had been forced into a dead zone, a sector of the multiverse where time did not flow at all. An unsettling, antiseptic white nothingness filled the space surrounding them. A large, brilliant green geometric web made of concentrated historical plasma encased the Hiraishin. It was a trap. They weren't facing a conventional Vanguard dreadnought looming immediately in front of them. It was a sleek, well-designed flagship, more like a luxury multiversal yacht than a battleship. It was shiny chrome and brilliant blue glass, not the warlord aesthetics of Rama Tut or the Scarlet Centurion. "They knew where we would exfiltrate." Sam gritted his teeth, his fingers hovering over the controls to launch the shield. "Hope, what about punching through the web?" "The engines are dead," Hope typed quickly. "The snare is sucking our PIM particles. If we try to jump, we'll shrink into a subatomic singularity and squish ourselves." A courteous, musical chime sounded from the Hiraishin's main comms panel. The primary holodable powered on. A variation of Kong was projected in the center of the bridge, but he wasn't in armor. He was dressed in an immaculate, finely fitted three-piece business suit, spun from faint, luminous chronal threads. His stance was calm, his hands steepled before him. He looked like a CEO contemplating a hostile takeover. "Good afternoon, Alliance," said the corporate version smoothly. His voice lacked the booming, megalomaniacal reverberation of Immortus's. It was calculated, it was right, it was immensely more dangerous. "I'm Mr. Griffin, Chief Executive of Kang Enterprises, and currently speaking for the High Council of the Dynasty." "You dress nice for a mass murderer," Tony 892 commented over the airwaves, his voice originating from Earth 892. "Is the tie silk, or spun from the souls of dead universes?" Griffin chuckled dryly, humorlessly. "Mr. Stark. Always the cynic. I am not a warlord like my brothers. Orbital bombardments strike me as terribly inefficient. Destroying assets is bad for the bottom line. I prefer acquisitions. And right now you are holding a very volatile, very disruptive asset." Griffin's holographic eyes whipped round, catching on to Naruto immediately. "The Sage of the Void," Griffin said, a predator light in his eye. "You destroyed Hephaestus Kang's forge. You stole trillions in temporal capital from the dynasty. My colleagues want to burn your watchtower to the ground. But I see a transaction opportunity." "We don't talk to conquerors," Naruto said, resting his hands normally at his sides, but immediately his chakra network was increasing, preparing for forceful output. "Everyone negotiates when the price is right, Uzumaki," Griffin grinned. He pushed a button on his end. The holodable fell apart. Next to Griffin's visage, there was a live, flowing projection of Earth 414. Not the glassed, obliterated crater they had left behind. It was a clean, busy Brooklyn. Cars drove past. People were walking about. Miles coughed and moved closer to the table. That's impossible. It's been wiped out." "It was removed from the active timeline, yes," Griffin corrected easily. "But we always keep backups at Kang Enterprises. I have the entire temporal data state of Earth 414 stored on a localized drive. I can restore it. I can rewind the clock, unglass the planet, and reinstate every single life you lost today." Miles's breath came in harsh gasps. His parents, his own buddies, his own, all there, dangling in front of him. "How much?" Sam's voice was low and menacing. He could see the psychological trap. "It's just a simple asset swap." Griffin looked Miles in the eye. "Spider-Man, you're a localized aberration of that world. If you agree to the restoration, the deal is sealed. All I ask in return is that you power down your ship's celestial shielding, and hand over Naruto Uzumaki and the Void Slayer." The bridge was quiet as the grave. Griffin was turning grief into a weapon. He wasn't trying to destroy their shields. He was trying to break their unity. "Your universe for the shinobi," Griffin said softly. "It's a good severance package. Take the deal, kid." The spider's bite. Miles looked at the hologram of his home. He saw the corner store he used to buy his snacks. There was his high school. He turned again to Naruto. The cage did not reach for his sword. He didn't look for a betrayal. He stood, immobile, watching Miles with pure and utter faith. "A home is more than the dirt you walk on. It's the fire you've got." Miles closed his eyes. The tears he had cried in the cargo bay were wiped away. As he opened them, the lenses of the Arachnid Mark I narrowed with a violent, earthly defiance. "Because you like acquisitions, Griffin," Miles responded evenly. Miles held up a hand and pressed it against the holographic projector on the console. "Here's something." Miles let loose a powerful, focused blast of golden yellow bioelectricity straight into the ship's comms array. Mega Venom Blast. The bioelectricity fried more than the holodable. Miles weaponized the Hiraishin's own tachyon broadcast frequency, blasting the tremendous electrical surge back up the transmission beam and right into Griffin's flagship. And then Griffin's smug face disappeared in a flurry of static on the hologram as his suit's chronal circuitry short-circuited violently. In a shower of sparks the transmission exploded. "Hope. The snare!" shouted Sam. The electrical feedback temporarily blinded Griffin's flagship, and the green geometric web around the Hiraishin wavered. "Thrusters on." Hope pushed the yoke forward. Naruto walked forward on the bridge, drawing the Void Slayer. He did not wait for the ship to strike the weakening snare. Inside the cockpit, he cut the hefty celestial marble through the air, blasting a gigantic crescent-shaped wave of violet-gold anti-cosmic energy through the canopy. Void Sage Art. Celestial Crescent. The wave hit the shimmering green web, forcefully splitting the chronal plasma into a million harmless bits. The Hiraishin came out of the gap, diving out of the white dead zone and into the wild purple eddies of the bleed. "Clear," America exclaimed, scanning the back scanners. "His flagship's stuck, he can't ride our slipstream." The strain broke at the bridge. Sam laughed heavily, clapping Miles hard on the shoulder. "That was one hell of a negotiation, kid." Miles leaned against the console, his hands shaking a bit, but with a tremendous, immovable burden lifted from his chest. His gaze shifted to the smoking comms array, then to Naruto. Naruto sheathed the Void Slayer and approached the juvenile Spider-Man. He didn't say anything, he just offered his fist. Miles grinned and raised his own shaky hand, tapping his knuckles against the cages. "They're going to realize we're not for sale," Naruto muttered, gazing out over the bleed as the spacecraft set course back toward the Panopticon. "The Council will be furious with Griffin's failure. The surgical strikes are ended. The dynasty is about to unleash full war." "Let them say it," replied Miles, the golden-yellow bioelectricity slightly flickering over his knuckles, like the hot, earthly fire in his eyes. "We'll be ready." The tachyon sensors of the Panopticon had not only been fixed, they had been armed. Tony Stark of Earth 892 stood on the main viewing platform, running his hands through the large hard-light holographic displays. The new arrays built outside the station were woven with the eldritch power of Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa. The sensors could see not just physical space, but the magical and temporal frequencies of the bleed. "I hate fixing things twice," Tony grumbled, the silver endo SIM collar around his neck pulsing as it interfaced with the station's computer. "So I beefed them up. If a Kong variation sneezes in the Omega Quadrant, we're going to feel the draft." Naruto Uzumaki stepped on deck, the heavy footfalls of his vibranium boots reverberating throughout the vast chamber. Behind him came Sam Wilson, Miles Morales and America Chavez. "Are the perimeter defenses fully operational?" Naruto said, voice firm. "Endo-sim cannons are primed and T'Challa has inscribed the outer hull with the rings of Ragador," Tony affirmed. "The Panopticon is officially a flying fortress. We can outrun a localized incursion if we need to." The hard light hologram in the center of the room flickered suddenly. The ambient, pristine white lighting of the observation deck suddenly changed to a deep, blazing red. "Warning. Massive temporal displacement detected. Sector grid. All of them." Tony's face went white. He eased off the holographic map. The three-dimensional web of the multiverse was vanishing under a spreading, aggressive wave of red dots. It was not a fleet. It was a chronological energy sea. "They're not looking at the branches now," Sam murmured, moving up to the window. Beyond the celestial forged canopy, the swirling purple nebulae of the quantum bleed started to boil. Great, rending tears in the fabric of the nothingness opened, pouring a sharp, furious red light into the dark. Through the cracks was flowing the real power of the dynasty. The space was filled with thousands of huge vanguard dreadnoughts, millions of chronal fighters, and towering floating siege engines. They surrounded the moon-sized Panopticon, blotting out the boundless horizon. At the head of the fleet was a flagship of continental proportions, aglow with the aggressive, blood-red emblem of the Scarlet Centurion. "Mr. Griffin brought awful news back," Miles gulped hard, his arachnid Mark I lenses narrowing. "The surgical strikes are done." "They brought the whole empire," cried America, her hands crackling with blazing star energy. Naruto didn't even flinch. The blue of his eyes flared with the furious, earth-born flame of the cage. "Tony, activate the shields. Sam, organize the air defense," Naruto said, removing the hefty pale marble of the Void Slayer from his back. "If they want to wipe us out, make them pay for every inch of glass." "The gates of fire. Shields up," Tony yelled. A huge, interlocking grid of silver hard light and brilliant orange magic sprang into existence around the Panopticon, providing a perfect spherical barrier against the Armada. The Scarlet Centurion's flagship fired the first volley. Millions of focused chronologic plasma beams lanced across the abyss, striking the shield. The whole space station creaked under the enormous multiversal pressure of the attack. Sparks rained from the observation deck's ceiling as the inertial dampeners fought to keep up. The barrier's holding, but it's bleeding thermal energy, Tony screamed, stretching his arms out and manually manipulating the shield's power distribution via the holodable. T'Challa, I need more juice in Quad 4. T'Challa sat deep in the magical heart of the station, in a lotus position, using the vibranium conduits to channel the raw magic from his universe. The wards are reinforced, stark, but they are shooting with the weight of endless timelines. Sam Wilson yelled, "We shoot back." Sam hit the communications console. "Activate Panopticon defense grid." The hull of the watchtower was lined with thousands of huge, silver endo-sim guns that roared to life. They weren't firing conventional repulsor blasts. Tony had changed the ammunition, injecting the plasma with localized PIM particles and shards of celestial marble dust they had scraped from Naruto's sword. The Panopticon shot into the mass. Celestial-infused repulsor blasts striking the dreadnoughts of the Vanguard ripped through their temporal drives with their anti-cosmic qualities dangerously destabilizing them. Dozens of gigantic Kong battleships exploding into subatomic singularities in bright, silent blasts of green and purple fire. "Direct hits," Miles said, looking at the tactical feed. But for every dreadnought killed by the Panopticon, 10 more were twisted into the bleed to take its place. The numbers were beyond comprehension. "They're firing boarding pods," America yelled, pointing to the sky. Micro-temporal jumps bypassed the primary shield and swarms of heavy, crimson drop pods materialized inside the barrier, smashing into the outer hull of the Panopticon. "The walls are breached," Friday's voice boomed over the klaxons. "Scarlet Vanguard borders in sectors 2, 5 and 9. Naruto looked to his team. "Tony, keep the sky. Don't let the flagship through the shields." Naruto instructed. "Miles, America, you take the lower sectors. Sam, you're with me. We're going to the roof." The Crimson Vanguard, Naruto and Sam hurtled down the flashing red halls of the Panopticon, heading for the higher airlocks. The station was already a battle zone. Liquid silver endo-sim drones were engaged in vicious hand-to-hand combat with massively armored Scarlet Centurions. Naruto didn't slow down. Naruto took a breath as a squad of Centurions came around the bend, lifting their chronal rifles. The uncontrolled, ambient radiation of the bleed flooded into his cells. The Void Sage's violet gold aura flared around him, blowing the loose debris in the corridor back behind him. He moved with a terrestrial perfection, blinding. He dove beneath the burst of plasma, closed the distance in a moment, and plunged the hilt of the Void Slayer into the chest of the lead Centurion, smashing the temporal anchor. He whirled without breaking speed, sending a sweeping and concentrated arc of violet gold energy from the sword that severed the chronal halberds of the surviving squad. Sam jumped off the wall behind him, wings springing open. He flung the vibranium shield, bouncing it against the ceiling of the passageway to take out the rest of the guards, catching the disc perfectly as he landed. "They're coming through the outer hull, heading for the main observation deck," Sam shouted above the sound of the battle. They reached the top airlock. Depressurizing, Sam pushed the manual override button. The doors flew open. They stepped out onto the outside hull of the Panopticon. The artificial gravity was concentrated enough to keep their boots locked onto the silver metal, while T'Challa's small, magical atmospheric bubble provided breathable oxygen. Above, the catastrophic conflict in space raged in absolute fearful silence. Dozens of hefty drop pods landed on the hull right in front of them. But the man who emerged from the central pod was not a typical soldier. He was dressed in thick, forbidding armor that burned with a savage, blood-red glare. His helmet was designed like a Roman gladiator's crest, his face obscured by a crimson visor. In his hand was a huge, double-bladed temporal scythe, buzzing with a horrifying, tiny time dilation field. The Scarlet Centurion had come. "The Iron Shinobi," bellowed the Scarlet Centurion, his voice shaking the hull plates. "Griffin gave you a quiet death. A peaceful surrender. You chose the sword. So the dynasty has given you the slaughter." Hundreds of elite Vanguard warriors behind him, in a phalanx, raising their hefty energy shields. Naruto stepped forward, the massive, pale marble blade of the Void Slayer in his right hand. His aura blazed a violet gold fire against the cold dark vacuum of the bleed. "I've fought gods that wanted to eat my world. I fought titans that wanted to balance the universe," Naruto said. There was the immovable, absolute weight of the hidden leaf in his voice. Naruto lifted the celestial blade, its point aimed right at the visor of the Scarlet Centurion. "You're just another tyrant hiding behind an army." Naruto's blue eyes flashed. "Your army will fall today." "Make them vanish," shouted the Scarlet Centurion. The vanguard pressed on. "Let's show them what Earth is made of, kid," Sam roared, his vibranium wings snapping into a tactical glide as he leapt above the vanguard's front line. Naruto did not run away. He bent his knees, pouring the scary, weighty void sage chakra straight into the celestial stone of his blade. The fire was violet and gold, flaring blindingly. The siege of the Panopticon was no longer a defensive one. A fight of monarchs in the graveyard of the multiverse. The Panopticon's external hull clashed silently in the bleed, but the vibrations echoed through their boots. Sam Wilson made the initial strike. He did not plunge directly into the Vanguard energy shields. He extended his vibranium wings to their full wingspan, activating the specialist localized gravity thrusters Tony had placed. He skimmed millimeters over the glittering deck, launching his shield with a furious, horizontal twist. The shield passed through the hefty frontal guards and ricocheted off the legs of the Vanguard warriors. The front line collapsed, like bowling pins. "Now, kid," Sam yelled over internal communications. Naruto Uzumaki rushed into the opening. The Void Sage's violet-gold aura trailed after him like a comet. He did not swing wildly. He moved with the surgical, fatal accuracy of the Hidden Leaf's elite. He slipped between a pair of thrusting chronal halberds, turning on his heel, and rammed the Void Slayer's massive marble pommel into a Centurion's visor. The glass shattered, and the localized temporal anchor fractured, disintegrating the soldier into gray dust. The Scarlet Centurion arrived before the dust had settled. Despite wearing hefty scarlet armor, the variation moved quickly. He swung his huge, two-bladed temporal scythe in a devastating downward arc. Naruto elevated the celestial sword in a horizontal block. The impact was catastrophic. Naruto's vibranium boots left a dent in the silver hull. The scythe's green time dilation field collided fiercely with the sword's anti-cosmic violet gold aura, causing blinding sparks to fly into the dark emptiness. "You rely on a rusted blade and borrowed radiation," the Scarlet Centurion mocked over the comms line, adding downward pressure. "I command the flow of reality itself." Naruto clenched his teeth, his Saiyan-like muscles bulging beneath his tunic. With a yell, he thrust forward, deflecting the scythe and immediately countering with a vicious, spinning roundhouse kick. His vibranium boot struck the Centurion solidly in the ribs. The massive crimson armor cracked. The Centurion was flung backward and skidded across the hull. Naruto did not hesitate. He used his Void Chakra, blurring forward with the Shunshin, to drive the Void Slayer through the Scarlet Centurion's chest plate. A deadly blow. However, there was no blood. There was no outcry of anguish. ZZZT. The cosmos stuttered, and Naruto blinked. He no longer stood over the variant's pierced body. He was standing exactly where he had been 5 seconds before, mid-roundhouse kick. However, the Scarlet Centurion was not there to accept the strike. The variation dived beneath the kick, predicting it correctly, and smashed the butt of his scythe squarely into Naruto's stomach. Naruto was tumbling across the silver hull after being blown backward by the kinetic energy. He drove the blade of his sword into the metal to stop his progress. Naruto coughed and his lungs burned. He looked up, his blue eyes narrowed in sharp, analytical focus. "Did you feel that anomaly?" The Scarlet Centurion smiled and raised his scythe. "I'm not the brawler that Hephaestus was. I'm the tactician. My armor has a localized chronal reversion drive. Every time you deliver a devastating blow, I merely rewind the previous 5 seconds. I know your movements before you do them. You can't kill me because your wins are instantaneously unwritten." "A localized time loop," Naruto murmured, his sovereign senses proving the horrible mechanical truth. "He's saving money." Sam cried out, flying down to launch a barrage of explosive micro-missiles at the Centurion. The missiles detonated and engulfed the warlord in fire. ZZZT. The time frame moved back 5 seconds. Sam fired missiles, but the Centurion easily absorbed the blasts. He then fired a tracking laser from his gauntlet, striking Sam's left wing and sending him spinning out of the sky. Naruto yelled as his pal landed hard on the deck 100 yards distant. "I'm good. Wing stabilizer is fried," Sam muttered over the comms. He took cover behind a hefty sensor array as Vanguard soldiers swarmed him. Naruto straightened up and rolled his shoulders. The violet gold fire grew hotter, feeding off the degradation of the chaotic bleed around them. Naruto approached the Scarlet Centurion. "You can rewind the clock," declaring. "However, you are still limited by the space you occupy. You're predicting a time-based enemy." "I will use the void." Empty threats from a dying primate. The Centurion scoffed, charging on. Naruto accepted the charge. The chaotic situation felt like a nightmare. Naruto battled flawlessly, using the Void Slayer to sever armor and bone. But every time he triumphed, reality struck, forcing him to stop an unexpected onslaught. ZZZT. He blocked a high strike and was kicked in the knee. ZZZT. He parried a strike, but a plasma bolt grazed his shoulder. Naruto was bleeding. His military tunic was torn. The Centurion was perfectly adapting to his every move, rewriting the combat till it was in his favor. "Yield!" yelled the Centurion, swinging his scythe in a decapitating arc. "You are locked in a cage of my design." Naruto avoided the scythe. He did not swing his sword, he dropped it. He flung his right palm forward, not at the Centurion, but at the empty space slightly to the left. He concentrated his Void Sage chakra to create a sphere of terrible anti-cosmic radiation. But he did not shape it in his hand. He exploited the bleed's cosmic mechanics to directly connect the chakra to the physical coordinates of the space itself. Check out Void Sage art. Suspended Horizon Rasengan. A little, black sphere with violet gold fire drifted silently in the empty air. It was a confined black hole made completely of anti-time. "You missed," the Centurion laughed, raising his scythe to impale the unarmed shinobi. Naruto smirked. A ferocious, bloody, terrestrial grin. "I wasn't aiming for the present." Naruto unleashed a powerful chakra-enhanced palm blow on the Centurion's chest. The blow destroyed the armor and crushed the variant's ribcage. The Scarlet Centurion moaned in pain. The devastating blow activated the armor's automatic fail-safe. ZZZT. Reality moved backward by 5 seconds. The Centurion prepared to wield his scythe, exactly 1 step to the left from where he was 5 seconds before. He smiled and prepared to counter Naruto's palm blow. The timeline was unable to rewind the void after returning the Centurion's physical body to the same coordinate. The Suspended Horizon Rasengan lived independently of ordinary chronal physics. It had not rewound. It was waiting right where Naruto had fastened it. The Scarlet Centurion appeared in the violet gold sphere of utter annihilation after a time skip. The anti-cosmic gravity quickly collapsed on him. The variant did not even have time to yell. The localized event horizon violently destroyed the warlord's massive crimson armor, temporal drive, and himself, compressing him into a microscopic singularity before completely disappearing. The time loop was broken. The tactician had died. Naruto collapsed to one knee, panting deeply, as the violet gold fire faded into a faint glow. Naruto reached over and removed the hefty marble of the Void Slayer off the silver deck. "Target neutralized," he said over the comms. "Nice trick, kid," Sam exclaimed, firing his sidearm to keep the Vanguard at bay. "But we've got a bigger problem." During the breaking of the shield, Naruto looked skyward. Without the Scarlet Centurion, the Vanguard warriors on the hull were scattered, but the enormous armada around the Panopticon continued firing. "Tony. Status." Naruto exclaimed. "The shields are failing." Tony's anxious voice crackled through the communications. "They're directing all power to the flagship's primary cannon. They're going to glass the entire station in 30 seconds. T'Challa is bleeding from magical weariness, and my drones are tapped. We can't hold the barrier." Naruto witnessed the continent-sized Scarlet flagship firing a gigantic, blinding red beam of chronological erasure. They battled with all they had. They'd built a watchtower, but a tower could not withstand a tsunami. "America," Naruto replied softly, rising to his feet. He glanced at the Conqueror's fleet's infinite red lights. "Open the evacuation gates. Bring everyone to Earth 892. Let the station fall." "No." America Chavez's voice crackled across the earpiece. She didn't sound panicked. She sounded defiant. "We didn't build this alliance just to run away, Naruto." "America, there are too many of them," Sam shouted. "I know," she said. That's why I made a few phone calls. The panopticon was suddenly surrounded by chaotic purple nebulae from the quantum bleed. It was not a red chronological fire, it was a dazzling, multicolored tempest of spatial rifts. The Scarlet Armada was totally surrounded by several star-shaped gateways that broke the space. A golden, spear-shaped Wakandan dreadnought erupted from the greatest portal, surpassing Earth 616's capabilities and size. Standing on the ship's prow, shimmering with orange eldritch magic, was Earth 991's Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa, commanding his reality's complete mystical and technical armadas. A fleet of sleek, silver, repulsor-powered helicarriers emerged from another vortex. Tony Stark 892's Iron Legion, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, had arrived, painting the dark space with bright white repellent light. From a smaller yet powerful golden-yellow vortex, dozens other spider variants appeared with the surviving Avengers from worlds that had not burned. "This is the Earth 892 Defense Fleet," a computerized voice blasted across open airwaves. "Target lock confirmed on all hostile chronal signatures." "This is the Wakandan Mystical Vanguard," another voice said. "We stand with the Panopticon." Naruto stood on the hull, his blue eyes wide, as he watched the sky fill with light from 1,000 surviving Earths. The sky was no longer red. It was a stunning, daring tapestry of terrestrial fire. "You wanted to build an army, kid." Sam laughed in disbelief before limping over to stand alongside Naruto. "Looks like you got one." Despite tiredness, Naruto tightened his grip on the Void Slayer and roared with unyielding pride. The Multiverse Alliance had arrived. Naruto's instruction, "All units," echoed over Limitless Worlds' communication links. "Break the line." The stillness of the quantum bleed was forcefully shattered. The Multiversal Alliance hit the Scarlet Armada. It wasn't like a war. It was like the birth of a new cosmos. The dark, swirling purple abyss was at once lighted by a terrifyingly beautiful clash of endless earth fire and frigid chronologic plasma. "All helicarriers, engage targeting protocols," Tony Stark 892 ordered over the open multiversal frequency. Hundreds of thousands of Endo-Sim drones spilled out of the sleek, silver carriers of the Earth 892 Defense Fleet like a river of liquid metal. They charged headlong into the Vanguard dreadnought's front ranks, their focused repulsor beams slicing into the crimson hulls with surgical accuracy. On the other flank, the Wakandan Mystical Vanguard, led by Sorcerer Supreme T'Challa of Earth 991, did not deploy lasers. For the worlds that were burned, from the bow of the golden spear-shaped dreadnought T'Challa yelled. Thousands of mystic warriors thrust their vibranium spears out. In the abyss a huge mandala of linked brilliant orange eldritch magic formed, miles across. It was a cosmic magnifying glass, collecting the chronological plasma shot out by the Kong warships, compressing it and fiercely reflecting it back with twice the kinetic yield. Drop pods incinerated in flight, chronal fighters broke like glass. On the outer hull of the Panopticon, Naruto Uzumaki watched the tide of the infinite conflict shift. The crushing terror of the dynasty's numbers had disappeared. Instead, there was the loud cry of total rebellion. Sam Wilson laughed breathlessly, holding his fried left wing. "Maybe I'll get used to this kind of backup." A sudden localized swarm of silver nanobots broke off an overhead 892 drone, washing over Sam's injured wing. The smart metal immediately mended and strengthened the vibranium circuitry. "Try not to scratch the paint, Captain," Tony 892's voice said over the speakers, smirking. "You are the brand ambassador." Sam's wings sprung open, new and silver-edged. "Come on, get to work." Sam vaulted off the Panopticon, plunging headlong into the swirling dogfights in the emptiness, his shield careening through the vacuum to smash the canopies of passing Vanguard planes. Miles Morales swooped by. No web anchor points in space at all, so he caught rides on passing Iron Legion drones. "Yee-haw! Next stop, the big ugly red one," Miles yelled, leaping off a drone to hit a Chronos behemoth's intake valve with a mega venom blast. The Continental cannon, the ambush by the Alliance, had been devastatingly successful, but the heart of the Scarlet Armada still beat. The Scarlet flagship floated in the center of the battlefield. It was the size of a landmass on Earth, entirely enclosed in an unbreakable, multi-layered shield of time. Its bow still charged with the huge crimson ring of the Total Erasure cannon. "Naruto." Hope Van Dyne's voice crackled wildly from the darting Hiraition, dodging through the crossfire. The Alliance fleet is tearing through their escorts, but they can't get through the flagship's shield. 60 seconds and the erase cannon hits critical mass. If it goes off, it'll not only hit the Panopticon, the blast radius will vaporize the entire Alliance fleet. Naruto's blue eyes fixed on the red blazing ring of the huge weapon. Tony, T'Challa, Naruto ordered over the command frequency. Spread your fleets out from the core. Clear a path to the flagship for me. Kid, that shield's knitted from the density of collapsed timelines, Tony 892 warned. You can't just punch through that. I'm not punching it, Naruto said as he sheathed the Void Slayer on his back. I'm going to unravel it. America Chavez crashed onto the hull of the Panopticon beside him, her denim jacket burnt, but her eyes ablaze with multiversal fire. Point and shoot, sir. Naruto dropped to his knees, the spark of primal gold in his chest flaring to its utmost. He swallowed the terrible, chaotic radiation of the entire battlefield. Magic, repulsors, chronal decay. The violet gold glow of the Void Sage flared up around him, not as a soft flame but as a roaring, blinding column of anti-cosmic force. Throw me, Naruto ordered. America Chavez retracted her right arm, a star energy forming into a dazzling, dense singularity around her fist. She didn't make a portal. She pushed her fist straight through the silver deck beneath Naruto's boots, channeling the pure, physical, concussive force of a multiversal breach upward. The kinetic shockwave was an apocalypse. Naruto shot out of the Panopticon like a bullet from the pistol of a god. He burned through the bleed's vacuum, a bright violet gold fire. He raced past the dogfights and the bursting dreadnoughts and the magical barrages and rocketed straight for the continent-sized Scarlet flagship. 30 seconds. Hope wailed. The flagship's temporal shield, a vast maelstrom of green chronological plasma loomed in front of him, impervious to normal physics. Naruto did not slow down. He didn't unsheath his sword. He pushed both his hands forward. Void Sage Art. Event Smasher Horizon. In his hands he formed two huge, hyper-dense black spheres, surrounded by violet gold flames. He slammed into the green temporal shield, drove the localized black holes right into the barrier. The anti-time gravity of the spheres seized the threads of the chronological shield with violence. Naruto yelled, his Saiyan muscles swelling till they ripped and physically tore his arms apart. The unbreakable time screen shouted and shattered and ripped open with a vengeance. Naruto shot through the gap, ignoring all the defenses of the flagship, and landed right on the sloped, enormous metal barrel of the total erasure cannon. The red ring at the end of the barrel was blinding, the energy of absolute erasing roaring as it got ready to fire. Naruto had his boots burned into the chronal metal of the barrel, pinning him into place. The flagship's command bridge, kilometers away, fixed its sights on the lone figure on the gun with its automated defense turrets. Heavy plasma bolts poured down at him in thousands. Naruto paid them no mind. The violet gold aura passively absorbed the plasma, nourishing his power. 10 seconds. The red light of the cannon flared, from crimson to a dazzling absolute white. The erasing was working. Naruto reached back over his shoulder and ripped the Void Slayer away. He didn't expend a portion of his energy on the celestial marble. He drank up the whole ocean. The primal gold ember in his heart, the Void Sage radiation in his cells, and the utter, unyielding wolf fire of the hidden leaf went into the blade. The pale marble sword flared. It did not simply glow, it was a beacon of earthly light that outshone the dying stars of the bleed. The knife stretched, a violet fire aura of anti-cosmic energy extending hundreds of feet into the vacuum. Naruto took a step forward, the cannon's strong gravity pulling at his bones. If I am the shield of this reality, Naruto thought, his limitless family flashing across his head, then my sword should be able to cleave the sky. Primal Void Art. Multiversal Severance. Naruto swung the huge shining blade down. The celestial marble hit the exact center of the total erasure cannon, right when the weapon discharged. The anti-cosmic powers of the blade met the wave of utter deletion, empowered by the sheer, pure mass of the Void Sage mode. The universe held its breath for one painful microsecond. The crimson glow of obliteration fought the violet gold of resilience. The sword was won with a crack that shook the earth, a deafening sound that reverberated through the very fabric of the multiverse. The blade sliced right through the continent-sized gun. But it didn't end there. The slice tore through the physical hull of the Scarlet flagship, slicing the continent-sized vessel neatly in half, bow to stern. The wave of kinetic, anti-cosmic force bore it. The severed barrel brutally violently destabilized the erase energy, which had nowhere to go. The flagship blew up. A great, quiet shockwave of red and purple fire detonated in the emptiness. The concussive power alone sent the nearby Vanguard dreadnoughts flying backwards, wrecking their temporal drives. Naruto was the center of the universe. The blast reached his Shinobi Mark II armor. The kinetic dampeners screeched as they absorbed an unfathomable amount of energy before abruptly short-circuiting. He was hurled back into the vacuum, unconscious, spinning amid the wreckage of the broken flagship. Before he could fall into the abyss, a blur of red, white and blue rushed through the turmoil. Sam Wilson grabbed him. The captain's vibranium wings groaned against the lingering shockwaves, but he gripped the golden-haired cage tight, carrying him back into the safety of the panopticon. The world tree. When Naruto opened his eyes, the flashing red emergency lights of the panopticon were gone. The viewing deck was illuminated with a peaceful, pleasant white light. He was lying on a cot in a field. Hovering above him were Princess Shuri of Earth 616 and a medical drone of Earth 892. Vitals are stabilizing, Shuri breathed, relief flooding across her face. Your cellular density is infuriatingly resilient, Uzumaki. Naruto sat up slowly. Every muscle in his body felt like it had been run over by a dreadnought, but the deep, underlying spark of his life force was still intact. He gazed about the room. Sam Wilson, Tony 892, T'Challa 991, Miles Morales, America Chavez, Wong, and Hope Van Dyne all stood around the viewport and stared into the bleed. Naruto stood, his legs wobbling slightly as he moved over to join them. Outside the glass, the turbulent purple nebulae of the quantum bleed were silent. The Scarlet Armada was gone. Gone entirely. Reduced to floating, pulverized chronal slag, or having scrambled back into the unspooled histories. But the emptiness was not empty. The panopticon was surrounded by the multiversal alliance, as far as the eye could see. Silver helicarriers, golden Wakandan cruisers, sorcerer galleons, and sleek Eurasian hovered in perfect, quiet formation. It was a fleet of never-ending hope. They fell back, Sam remarked gently, his eyes still on the magnificent armada. The flagship cracked and Vanguard broke formation. They rushed into the deeper bows. We injured him, Tony 892 said, arms folded over his chest. We didn't merely swat away a raiding party. We shattered the back of the Scarlet Centurion's fleet. The Council of Kangs will like that one. They will return, T'Challa said, his voice a deep, wise echo of the mystic arts. The dynasty is endless. But today we showed infinity could bleed. Naruto laid a palm on the cool glass of the viewport. He gazed out toward the Alliance ships. He saw the fire of thousands of worlds, together against the dark. In the hidden leaf, we thought the village was a tree. Naruto's voice was soft, but it rang clearly across the observation deck. The people are the leaves, and the will of fire is the root that nourishes them. Immortus sought to cut the branches. The dynasty tried to set fire to the woodland. Naruto looked at his comrades, the assembled leaders of the united multiverse. But they'd forgotten, grinned the Iron Shinobi, with a strong, earthly spark burning in his blue eyes. When you cut away the rot, the roots just grow deeper. We're not simply one Earth hidden behind a wall anymore. Naruto glanced back out at the endless fleet of shining ships. We are the world tree. And the dynasty shall snap on our branches. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.